Clara pressed her frozen hand over Samuel's mouth to muffle his cries. Footsteps crunched through the snow behind her, getting closer. Closer. "I know you're out here, Miss Whitmore." Marcus Ashford's voice cut through the blizzard like a blade. "Give me the child and I'll let you walk away. Fight me and you'll both freeze to death tonight. Your choice." Clara's legs wouldn't move. Her 6-month-old son had stopped struggling against her palm. Too quiet, too still. God help her, she was going to die in this storm. But Samuel would not become an Ashford. Not while she still had breath. She ran. If you want to know how Clara and Samuel survived this night, subscribe to my channel and stay until the end. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. 3 hours earlier, Clara Whitmore had believed in miracles. "Wait here, darling." Thomas Ashford pressed a kiss to her forehead on the platform of Copper Springs Station. "I'll arrange our lodging and return within the hour. Keep Samuel warm." She watched him disappear into the falling snow, tall and handsome in his city coat. Her savior. The man who'd promised to make her his wife, to give Samuel his name, to build them a new life far from Philadelphia's wagging tongues. She waited. 1 hour became 2. 2 became 3. The platform emptied around her as passengers found their destinations, and the station grew quiet. "Last call for the 6 o'clock eastbound." The conductor's shout echoed across the empty platform. Clara stood Samuel fussing against her shoulder. "Pardon me, have you seen a gentleman? Tall, dark hair, well-dressed." The conductor barely glanced at her. "Lady, I seen 100 gentlemen today. Train's leaving in 2 minutes. But he said he'd return." "Ain't my problem, miss." He swung himself onto the train car. "Either get on or get off the platform." The train pulled away with a shriek of steam and grinding metal. Clara watched it go, telling herself Thomas had simply been delayed. Any moment now he'd appear with news of a warm room and a hot meal. Any moment. The station master found her an hour later, still standing on the platform, with snow accumulating on her shoulders. "Station's closing." He was a weathered man with tobacco-stained teeth and eyes that had seen too much human misery to care about one more. "Can't stay here." "I'm waiting for someone. Thomas Ashford." Ashford. The man's eyebrows shot up. "Well-dressed fellow, city manners, fancy walking stick." Hope flared in Clara's chest. "Yes. Have you seen him?" "Saw him board the 6 o'clock eastbound." The station master spat on the wooden planks. "First-class car. Looked mighty comfortable. Alone." The word hit Clara like a physical blow. "That's impossible. He wouldn't. Got a good look at your situation, did he?" The station master's eyes dropped to her ringless finger, to Samuel, to the worn carpet bag at her feet. His expression shifted from indifference to contempt. "Reckon he decided you wasn't worth the trouble." "No." Clara shook her head. "There's been a mistake. Thomas loves me. He promised." "Men promise lots of things to get what they want from a woman." The station master pulled his coat tighter against the cold. "Ain't my business what you done to end up here, but the station's closing and you can't stay." "Where am I supposed to go?" "Ain't my problem neither." He turned away. 10 minutes, miss. Then I'm locking up." Clara gathered Samuel closer and stepped off the platform into the snow. The town of Copper Springs lay before her, its windows glowing with lamplight that promised warmth she couldn't access. She tried the mercantile first. The bell above the door jangled as she entered, bringing a rush of blessed warmth. A woman stood behind the counter, sharp-faced and thin-lipped, sorting through bolts of fabric. "We're closed." "Please, ma'am." Clara hated the desperation in her voice. "My baby needs milk. If you could just—" The woman's head snapped up. Her eyes performed the same calculation the station masters had: the ringless finger, the infant, the travel-worn dress. "I said we're closed." Her voice could have frozen the snow outside. "This is a respectable establishment. We don't serve your kind." "My kind." Fallen women. The word dripped with venom. Should have thought about your baby before you spread your legs for a man who wasn't your husband. Get out before I call the sheriff. Clara stumbled back onto the street, face burning despite the cold. Samuel began to cry, hungry and cold, and sensing his mother's distress. Shh, sweet boy. She bounced him gently, her own tears freezing on her cheeks. Mama will find us somewhere warm, I promise. She tried the boarding house next. The proprietor, a heavy woman with suspicious eyes, took one look at her and slammed the door without a word. The saloon was worse. The bartender laughed in her face, then offered her work with a leer that made her skin crawl. Finally, desperate beyond reason, Clara approached the church. Its white steeple rose against the gray sky like a beacon of hope. Surely, here in God's house someone would help. The doors were locked. Clara pounded with frozen fists. Please, I know someone's there. Please, I have a baby. Through the window, she could see candles burning on the altar. Someone had lit them recently. Someone was inside, choosing not to answer. Please. Her voice broke. Christian charity, isn't that what you preach? Nothing. Clara sank to her knees on the church steps, Samuel wailing against her chest. The snow was falling harder now, thick white curtains that obscured the street. Her fingers had gone from cold to numb to burning, and she knew what that meant. Frostbite, then death, for both of them. Well, well. Clara's head jerked up. A man emerged from the shadows beside the church, well-dressed in city clothes that marked him as an outsider. His face was handsome in a cold, sharp way, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. Miss Clara Whitmore. He tipped his hat. I've been looking for you. Fear cut through Clara's despair. Who are you? Marcus Ashford. He took a step closer. Thomas's brother. I believe you have something that belongs to my family. Clara struggled to her feet, pressing Samuel against her chest. I don't know what you're talking about. The child. Marcus's smile widened. Thomas was indiscreet. Created complications that could damage our family significantly. Our father is running for Senate, you see. An illegitimate grandchild would be most inconvenient. Thomas promised to marry me. Thomas promises many things. Marcus waved a dismissive hand. He's promised the same to at least 3 other women that I know of. Did you really think you were special? A disgraced minister's daughter with nothing but a pretty face and loose morals? The cruelty of his words stole Clara's breath. Get away from us. I'm not here to hurt you, Miss Whitmore. I'm offering you a solution. Marcus spread his hands in a gesture of false reasonableness. Give me the child. Walk away. We'll provide you with enough money to start over somewhere far from here. No one needs to know. He's my son. He's a liability. Marcus's patience was thinning, the mask of civility slipping. What can you give him? No name, no family, no future. He'll grow up a bastard, mocked and scorned wherever he goes. With us, he'll have the Ashford name, Ashford money, Ashford connections. Is your pride really worth condemning him to a life of shame? For one terrible moment, Clara wavered. What could she give Samuel? She had nothing. No money, no home, no family willing to claim her. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe Samuel deserved better than a fallen mother who couldn't even keep him warm. Then Samuel's tiny hand reached up and grasped her collar. His dark eyes, Thomas's eyes, meeting hers with perfect trust. No. Clara's voice came out stronger than she felt. He's mine. You can't have him. Marcus's expression hardened. I wasn't asking. He snapped his fingers, and 2 men materialized from the shadows behind him. Big men with rough hands and empty eyes. Take the child. Clara ran. She didn't think, didn't plan. Just turned and fled into the storm. Behind her she heard Marcus curse, heard boots pounding through the snow in pursuit. Stop her. Don't let her reach the tree line. Clara's lungs burned as she pushed through drifts that reached her knees. Samuel screamed against her chest, terrified by the jolting motion and the chaos around them. Her skirts tangled around her legs, slowing her down. Closer. They were getting closer. Clara's boot caught on a hidden root and she pitched forward. She twisted at the last second, taking the fall on her shoulder to protect Samuel. Pain exploded through her arm, but she bit back her scream. There! One of Marcus's men was almost on her. I've got her! Clara scrambled backward through the snow, kicking at the reaching hands. Stay away from us! Enough! Marcus appeared above her, breathing hard, snow dusting his expensive coat. You're only making this harder on yourself. Give me the child and I'll let you walk away. I'll die first. That can be arranged. Marcus nodded to his men. Hold her down. Take the baby. Rough hands grabbed Clara's arms, pinning her to the frozen ground. She screamed, kicked, bit anything to keep them from prying Samuel away from her. Mama's got you, she sobbed as fingers closed around her son's blanket. Mama's got you, baby. I won't let go. I won't. A gunshot split the night. Everyone froze. Step away from the woman. The voice came from the darkness beyond the trees, low and rough, carrying an authority that expected instant obedience. Marcus recovered first. This is none of your concern, stranger. Family matter. I said step away. A figure emerged from the swirling snow, mounted on a massive chestnut horse. He held a rifle leveled at Marcus's chest with the easy confidence of a man who'd used it many times before. Won't ask again. Do you know who I am? Marcus's voice pitched higher with outrage. My father is... Don't care if your father's the president himself. The rider's horse stamped impatiently as he guided it closer. In these mountains, I'm the law, and right now the law says you're gonna let that woman go and ride back to whatever hole you crawled out of. Marcus hesitated, calculating odds. 2 of his men against 1 stranger. But that rifle hadn't wavered, and something in the rider's stillness suggested he wouldn't miss. This isn't over, Marcus hissed at Clara. That child is Ashford blood. He belongs with his family. He belongs with his mama. The rider's voice was flat. Now get, before I decide to save the territory the cost of a trial. Marcus gestured sharply to his men. They released Clara and backed away, hands raised. Within moments, they had disappeared into the storm, swallowed by the white darkness. Clara lay in the snow, gasping, clutching Samuel to her chest. Her whole body shook with cold and terror and overwhelming relief. The stranger dismounted and approached slowly, rifle now lowered, but still ready. In the dim light, Clara could make out a weathered face, a long scar running from temple to jaw, gray eyes that seemed to see straight through her. You hurt. Clara shook her head, then nodded, then burst into tears. The terror of the last hours crashed over her like a wave, and she couldn't stop the sobs that tore from her throat. Can you stand? She tried. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. Without another word, the stranger shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth was so sudden, so unexpected, that Clara gasped. I'm gonna pick you up now. He said, his voice surprisingly gentle. Put you on my horse. Get you somewhere warm. That all right? Clara nodded weakly. He lifted her like she weighed nothing, settling her onto the horse before mounting behind her. His arms created a protective circle as he took the reins, and Clara felt for the first time in hours safe. The baby. His breath was warm against her ear. Samuel, my son. Clara's teeth chattered so violently she could barely speak. He's so quiet. I'm afraid... A large calloused hand reached around and gently touched Samuel's cheek. He's warm, breathing steady. Probably worn himself out crying. Babies do that. Relief flooded through her. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know how to... Don't. The single word cut her off. Thank me when we're somewhere warm, and those men ain't coming back." They rode through the storm in silence. Clara felt consciousness slipping away, exhaustion and cold finally claiming their due. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was the stranger's voice, unexpectedly tender. "Hold on now. You're safe, both of you." Clara woke to warmth and the smell of wood smoke. She bolted upright, heart-pounding hands reaching for Samuel before her eyes were fully open. "Easy, child. Your boy's right here." An elderly black woman sat beside the bed, a small bundle in her arms. She was singing softly to Samuel, who cooed contentedly, his fist wrapped around her finger. Clara's breath came out in a rush. "Oh, thank God! Thank God!" "He's a strong one." The woman smiled, deep lines crinkling around kind eyes. "Took to goat's milk like he was born to it. Been fed, changed, and warm as toast for the better part of 2 days now." 2 days. Clara looked around, taking in the rough-hewn log walls, the sturdy furniture, the fire crackling in a stone hearth. "Where am I?" "Caleb Thornton's ranch, about 12 miles outside Copper Springs." The woman rose and placed Samuel gently in Clara's arms. "Name's Bessie Washington. I keep house for Mr. Thornton. He's the one who found you in that storm." Clara clutched her son close, breathing in his familiar baby smell, feeling his solid weight against her chest. Alive. They were both alive. "The man who saved us," she said. "Where is he? I need to thank him." "Out with the horses. Always is this time of morning." Bessie moved to stoke the fire. "Ain't much for conversation, that one. But he's got a good heart buried under all that silence. Those men who were chasing us ain't seen hide nor hair of anyone." Bessie's voice was reassuring, but her eyes were sharp. "Storm covered your tracks good and proper. This ranch ain't easy to find even in fair weather." Clara nodded, slowly absorbing this. Safe. For now, at least. "Bessie." She hesitated. "How much did Mr. Thornton tell you about my situation?" "Told me a woman and child needed help." Bessie shrugged. "That's all I needed to know." "But surely you must wonder." "Child." Bessie turned to face her, expression serious. "I spent 32 years as property in Virginia. Had my daughter sold away from me when she was 6 years old. I know what it means to be at the mercy of men who think they own you." Her voice softened. "Whatever trouble you running from whoever those men were, it don't matter in this house. You understand?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Winter's just starting, and Caleb Thornton ain't exactly warm company." Bessie's lips quirked. "But he's good people down deep. Just takes some digging to find it." The cabin door opened, bringing a gust of cold air. Clara's breath caught as the stranger from the storm filled the doorway. He was bigger than she remembered, shoulders nearly brushing the frame on either side. In the daylight, the scar on his face stood out starkly, a jagged line from his left temple to his jaw, silver white against weathered skin. His gray eyes found Clara, immediately assessing her with clinical efficiency. Then his gaze dropped to Samuel, nestled contentedly in her arms, and something flickered across his features too quickly to name. "You're awake." His voice was the same low rasp she remembered from the storm. "Yes, I—" Clara struggled to sit up straighter, suddenly conscious of her tangled hair and borrowed nightgown. "Mr. Thornton, I can't thank you enough." "Name's Caleb." He moved to the fire, adding a log without looking at her. "And I told you last night, don't need thanks. You saved our lives." "Did what needed doing." He straightened, still not meeting her eyes. "Storm's past. Roads should clear in a few days. Bessie will see to your needs till you're fit to travel." The dismissal was clear, but Clara pushed forward. "Mr. Thor, Caleb, those men who were chasing us, they'll be looking for us. They won't give up. Ain't found this place yet? But if they do, then I'll handle it." Finally, he looked at her. Those gray eyes held no warmth but no cruelty either, just a vast, tired emptiness. "Nobody takes anything from my land without my permission, including you and your boy." It wasn't a promise, wasn't even an offer of protection. But something in his voice, in his stillness, made Clara believe him absolutely. "I don't even know why you helped us," she said softly. "You could have ridden past. Everyone else did." Caleb's jaw tightened. For a long moment, Clara thought he wouldn't answer. "Had a daughter once," he said finally. "Rose. She was 3 when she died. Fire took her and her mama both while I was 50 miles away, making horseshoes for a war that didn't matter." Clara's heart clenched. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be." His voice was flat emotionless, but his hands had curled into fists at his sides. "Wasn't your doing. Wasn't anybody's doing except fate or God or whatever you want to call the thing that takes everything good and leaves you standing in the ashes." He moved toward the door, conversation apparently concluded. But Clara couldn't let him go. Not yet. "Caleb." He paused, hand on the latch. "Your daughter, Rose." Clara held Samuel a little tighter. "She'd be proud of what you did last night." Caleb stood frozen for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "No. She'd wonder why her daddy wasn't there to save her." The door closed behind him, leaving Clara alone with the crackle of the fire and the weight of his grief. Days passed, then a week. Clara grew stronger, venturing first from her bed to the main room, then to the small kitchen where Bessie taught her to bake bread and prepare the simple meals that sustained the household. Caleb remained a ghost, leaving before dawn and returning after dark. He took his meals in silence when he took them at all, and Clara learned quickly not to expect conversation. But she noticed things. The way he always checked that the fire was well stocked before he left each morning. The cup of hot tea that appeared at her bedside each day, though she never saw him bring it. The small wooden rattle that materialized in Samuel's cradle one morning, carved with careful precision, smooth enough that tiny fingers couldn't find splinters. "He made toys for Rose," Bessie explained when Clara asked. "Used to spend his evenings carving by the fire while Emma, that was his wife, sewed. This is the first time I've seen him pick up a whittling knife since the fire." Clara turned the rattle over in her hands, tracing the smooth curves. Such a small thing. Such a massive gesture from a man who had walled himself off from the world. "Bessie, what happened to him after the fire?" Bessie was quiet for a moment, hands stilling on the dough she was kneading. He stopped talking, stopped eating for a while, stopped doing anything but sitting by those 2 graves up on the ridge. "How did you find him?" "I was walking north looking for my Sarah, my daughter." Bessie's voice softened. "Found him instead, half dead from grief, sitting in the rain like he was waiting to join his family in the ground. And you stayed. Someone needed to." Bessie resumed her kneading with renewed vigor. "That man saved my life as much as I saved his, though he'd never admit it. Gave me a home when I had nothing. A purpose when I'd lost everything." Clara thought about this as she watched Caleb through the window, working with a young mare in the paddock. His movements were patient, gentle, a stark contrast to his gruff demeanor with people. "He's different with the horses," she observed. "Horses don't ask questions." Bessie joined her at the window. "Don't expect anything from him but food and fair treatment. People are harder. People want things he ain't sure he can give anymore." As if sensing their attention, Caleb looked up. His eyes met Clara's through the glass, held for just a moment, then deliberately looked away. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat by the fire, Samuel dozing in her arms, watching the flames dance. Her mind churned with memories. She'd tried to bury Thomas's promises, her father's rejection, Marcus's cold eyes as he ordered his men to take her son. The door opened softly. Caleb stood in the entrance, snow dusting his shoulders. He seemed surprised to find her awake, but recovered quickly, moving to add wood to the fire. "Can't sleep?" he asked without looking at her. "Thinking too much?" He grunted acknowledgement, poking at the logs until they caught properly. The firelight played across his scarred face, softening the harsh lines. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said. Another grunt, which she took as permission. "Why did you really save us? And don't say you did what needed doing. A lot of people saw what needed doing that night in Copper Springs." They all walked away. Caleb was quiet for so long, Clara thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I know what it's like, being alone, needing help, and having the world turn its back." He straightened, finally meeting her eyes. "Night Emma and Rose died, I wasn't there. But other people were. Neighbors, friends, folks who could have helped. They saw the flames and they stayed home, told themselves it wasn't their problem." Clara's heart ached at the bitterness in his voice. "That's not your fault." "No, but it's theirs." His jaw tightened. "I can't change what happened to my family. Can't bring them back. But I swore on their graves that if I ever had the chance to help someone the way nobody helped them, I'd do it. No matter what. Even a stranger, a fallen woman with a bastard child." Caleb flinched at her harsh words. "You ain't fallen, and that boy ain't a bastard." The whole town seemed to think otherwise. Town's full of hypocrites. He moved closer, close enough that Clara could see the firelight reflected in his gray eyes. "I've known plenty of so-called respectable folks who'd sell their own mothers for a profit. And I've known whores with hearts purer than any preacher's wife. The world don't get to decide your worth based on whether some man put a ring on your finger." Clara stared at him, speechless. It was more words than she'd heard him speak in the entire week she'd been here. Caleb seemed to realize this too. He stepped back, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Storm's clearing. Roads should be passable soon. And then you figure out where you're going." He paused at his bedroom door. "But you're welcome to stay through winter, if you want." It wasn't warmly offered, wasn't even graciously offered. But Clara heard what lay beneath the gruff words. A door cracked open, an invitation extended despite every instinct telling him to stay isolated. "I'd like that," she said softly, "if we wouldn't be imposing." Caleb's expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed slightly. Bessie could use the help, and that boy needs proper care through the cold months. He was giving her reasons, Clara realized. Practical justifications that had nothing to do with the real reason he was asking them to stay. Because admitting he wanted their company would mean admitting he was lonely. And Caleb Thornton would sooner cut off his own hand than admit vulnerability. "Then we'll stay," Clara said. "Thank you, Caleb." He nodded once sharply and disappeared into his room. But Clara could have sworn she saw the ghost of something cross his face before he turned away. Not quite a smile. Not yet. But the possibility of one. In Copper Springs, the storm had cleared enough for Marcus Ashford to resume his hunt. 12 ranches within riding distance. His man spread a map across the hotel room table. "Most are small operations, easy to search, but there's a few up in the mountains that'll be harder to reach." Marcus traced his finger along the mountain roads, stopping at a spot marked with a small X. "What's this one? Thornton Place. Ornery cuss from what the locals say. Keeps to himself. Lost his family to a fire 8 years back and ain't been right since. Perfect place to hide." Marcus straightened, reaching for his coat. "We'll start there at dawn." "Sir, the man's got a reputation. Folks say he's handy with a rifle and ain't shy about using it. I don't care if he's Wild Bill Hickok himself." Marcus's eyes were cold. "That woman has something that belongs to my family, and I will get it back, whatever it takes." He thought of his father's face when he'd left Philadelphia. The barely contained fury, the threat implicit in every word. "Find that child, Marcus. Our family's future depends on it. Do not fail me." Whatever it takes. Marcus checked his pistol and smiled. The hunt was just beginning. 3 weeks into her stay at Caleb's ranch, Clara discovered she could milk a goat. It wasn't graceful, The first attempt left her splattered with milk and nursing a bruised ego, while Bessie laughed so hard she had to sit down. But by the third try, Clara had figured out the rhythm: gentle pressure, steady pull, patience. "You got farmer's hands hiding under all that city softness," Bessie observed, watching Clara fill the bucket with practiced strokes. "Who'd have thought?" Clara smiled, wiping sweat from her forehead despite the cold. "My mother would faint if she could see me now. She spent 18 years teaching me to be a proper lady. Piano lessons, needlepoint French conversation." "That help you much out here?" "Not even a little." Clara stood, stretching her back. "But this feels useful, real." She carried the milk inside, where Samuel lay in his cradle by the fire, gnawing contentedly on the wooden rattle Caleb had carved. At 7 months old, he was growing fast, chubby cheeks, bright eyes that tracked everything, a laugh that could melt stone. Even Caleb's stone Clara had noticed. She'd caught him watching Samuel more than once, a strange expression on his scarred face. Not quite longing, not quite pain, something in between that made Clara's heart ache. "He ever talk to you about Rose?" Clara asked Bessie that afternoon as they kneaded bread together. "His daughter." Bessie's hands stilled briefly. "Once. Only once, about a year after it happened. He was drunk, only time I ever saw him touch liquor. Started talking about how she used to laugh. Said her laugh sounded like church bells." "What happened to make him stop?" "Life." Bessie resumed kneading. "Grief. The war took something from him, but losing them." She shook her head. "That broke something deeper, something I ain't sure can be fixed." Clara thought about this as she worked her hands, finding rhythm in the familiar motions. She understood brokenness, understood what it meant to have everything you believed shattered in a single moment. The door banged open. Caleb stood in the entrance, breathing hard, rifle in hand. His gray eyes swept the room, found Clara, found Samuel. "Get away from the windows." Clara's blood ran cold. "What is it?" "Riders. Coming up the north road. 3 of them." Bessie moved immediately, lifting Samuel from his cradle and carrying him toward the back of the house. Clara stood, frozen memories of that night in the storm flooding back Marcus's cold eyes. Rough hands grabbing her arms, fingers reaching for her son. "Clara." Caleb's voice snapped her back. "I need you to listen to me. There's a root cellar under the kitchen floor. Bessie knows where. You take Samuel and you hide there. Don't come out till I tell you, no matter what you hear. Understand?" "But, understand." Clara nodded, throat too tight for words. Caleb crossed to her in 3 long strides. His hand closed around her arm, not rough but firm enough to make her look at him. "I ain't gonna let them take your boy." His voice was low, fierce. "I made a promise to myself a long time ago. Nobody else dies on my watch. Nobody else gets taken while I stand by and do nothing. Caleb, go. Now." Clara went. The root cellar was dark and cramped, smelling of earth and stored vegetables. Clara crouched in the corner, Samuel pressed against her chest, Bessie beside her with a hand on her shoulder. Above them, boots crossed the floor. The front door opened. "Morning, gentlemen." Caleb's voice, calm and cold. "Something I can help you with?" "We're looking for a woman." Marcus Ashford's voice sent ice through Clara's veins. "Young, dark-haired. She'd have an infant with her. Someone in town said they saw a rider heading this direction the night of the blizzard." "Lots of riders in these mountains. Ain't seen any women." "Mind if we look around?" "Yeah, I do mind." A pause. Clara held her breath. "Mr. Thornton, is it?" Marcus's voice took on a silky quality. "I understand you're a man who values his privacy. I respect that. But this is a family matter. The woman stole something valuable from us. We simply want to recover what's ours." "What's that got to do with me?" "Perhaps nothing. Perhaps everything. A quick search of your property, and we'll be on our way." "Already told you. Ain't no woman here. You're welcome to ride on." "I don't think you understand the situation. Marcus's voice hardened. My father is Harrison Ashford. Perhaps you've heard the name. He has connections in Washington. Connections that could make life very difficult for a man trying to run a horse ranch in the middle of nowhere. That's supposed to scare me. It should. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, Mr. Thornton. Your choice. Another pause. Then Caleb spoke, his voice flat as a blade. Let me tell you something, Mr. Ashford. I spent 4 years in a war watching men die in ways you can't imagine. Lost my wife and daughter to a fire while I was away fighting. Buried them with my own hands. After that, there ain't much in this world that scares me anymore. A creak of floorboards as he moved. You want to search my property? Come back with a warrant. You want to threaten me? Make sure you're ready to back it up. Now get off my land before I decide to save the territory the cost of a trial. Clara heard the distinctive click of a rifle being cocked. This isn't over, Marcus said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. That child is Ashford blood. He belongs with his family. Only family I see here is mine, and you're trespassing on it. Boots retreated. Horses whinnied. Hoofbeats faded into the distance. Clara didn't move, didn't breathe. Samuel squirmed against her chest, and she pressed her lips to his forehead, willing him to stay quiet just a little longer. The cellar door opened. Caleb's face appeared above them, backlit by the gray winter light. They're gone, for now. Clara's legs were shaking so badly she could barely climb out. Caleb reached down and helped her up, his hand warm and rough against hers. He didn't let go immediately. He knew, Clara whispered. He knew we were here. He suspected, couldn't prove nothing. Caleb finally released her hand. But he'll be back. Men like that don't give up easy. I should leave, take Samuel, and go where? Caleb's voice was sharp. Back to that station. Back to that town full of people who turned their backs on you. How far you reckon you'd get before they caught you? Clara had no answer. You're staying. Caleb moved to the window, scanning the horizon. We'll figure out the rest later. But right now, you're safer here than anywhere else in the territory. Why? The question burst out of Clara before she could stop it. Why do you care? You don't even know me. You don't owe me anything. Caleb turned to face her. In the dim light of the cabin, his scarred face looked almost gentle. I know you're a mother who'd die for her child, he said quietly. I know you got nobody else to turn to. I know what it feels like to be alone against the world. He paused. That's enough. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Caleb, don't. He held up a hand. Don't thank me. Don't make this into something it ain't. Just stay. Get through the winter. Then we'll figure out what comes next. He walked out before she could respond, leaving Clara standing in the middle of the cabin with Samuel in her arms and a heart full of emotions she couldn't name. Bessie appeared from the back room, her face troubled. That man ain't gonna stop, is he, the Ashford one? No. Clara held Samuel tighter. He won't. Then we best be ready for when he comes back. Bessie's chin lifted with determination. This household has survived worse than some fancy city man with delusions of power. We'll survive this too. Clara wished she shared Bessie's confidence. That night she lay awake long after Samuel had fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling and listening to the wind howl outside. In the main room, she could hear Caleb moving, checking windows, adding wood to the fire. Standing guard. For her. For Samuel. She didn't understand it. Didn't understand him. A man who had lost everything, who had walled himself off from the world, who could barely string together a sentence in casual conversation, that same man was willing to face down dangerous enemies for a woman he barely knew. Clara rose quietly and padded to the doorway. Caleb sat by the fire rifle across his knees, staring into the flames. He didn't look up when she appeared, but she knew he was aware of her presence. Can't sleep? He asked. No. She moved closer, settling into the chair across from him. Too much thinking. Know the feeling. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Clara studied his profile, the strong jaw, the scar that curved down his cheek, the permanent furrow between his brows. "Tell me about Emma," she said softly. Caleb's hand tightened on the rifle. "Why?" "Because you know everything about my shame, my mistakes, the father who disowned me, the man who abandoned me, the people who called me a fallen woman." Clara pulled her shawl tighter. "I want to know about the people who made you who you are." For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Emma was sunshine." His voice was rough. "That's the only way to describe her. She walked into a room and everything got brighter. She laughed at my jokes even when they weren't funny, made me feel like the luckiest man alive just because she chose me." "How did you meet?" "Church social, back in Virginia before the war." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She was wearing a yellow dress. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Asked her to dance 3 times before she finally said yes. And Rose. The ghost faded. Rose was perfect. Had her mama's smile and my stubborn streak. Used to follow me around the forge watching me work. I'd make her little things, toys, trinkets. She kept them all in a box under her bed. His voice broke slightly on the last word. Clara wanted to reach out to touch his hand, but she sensed he wouldn't welcome it. "I was in Tennessee when it happened." Caleb's eyes were fixed on the flames. "Making horseshoes for the cavalry. Got word that a fire had swept through our property. By the time I made it home, there was nothing left but ashes and 2 graves." "I'm so sorry." Everybody was sorry. Neighbors, friends, the preacher who gave the eulogy. Bitterness crept into his voice. They were all real sorry, but not a single one of them had lifted a finger to help when it mattered. Fire burned for 6 hours, Clara. 6 hours. And not one person in that whole town thought to check on a woman and child alone. Clara understood now. Understood why he'd ridden into a blizzard to save a stranger. Understood why he stood guard while she slept. Understood why he couldn't turn away from someone in need, because turning away would make him like them. The neighbors who watched the flames. The townspeople who closed their doors. The world that had failed his family when they needed it most. "It wasn't your fault," she said quietly. "You know that, don't you?" "My head knows it." Caleb finally looked at her. "My heart's got different ideas. Hearts are stubborn that way." "Yeah." Something shifted in his expression. "Reckon they are." They sat in silence again, but it was different now. Warmer. More comfortable. 2 broken people finding unexpected solace in each other's company. "You should sleep," Caleb said eventually. "I'll keep watch." "You can't stay up all night. Done it before. Will again." He shifted the rifle slightly. "Go on. That boy needs his mama rested." Clara rose, but paused at the doorway. "Caleb." He looked up. "Thank you for trusting me with that story." Something flickered in his gray eyes. "Didn't tell it to just anyone." "I know." Clara held his gaze. "That's why I'm thanking you." She returned to her room before he could respond, but she carried the warmth of the moment with her. And for the first time since arriving at the ranch, she fell asleep feeling something other than fear. Hope. Fragile and small, but unmistakably there. The days that followed took on a new rhythm. Caleb remained watchful, riding the perimeter of his property each morning and evening, checking for signs of unwelcome visitors. But between patrols, something shifted in his demeanor. He lingered at breakfast now, listening to Bessie's chatter and Clara's observations about ranch life. He offered small comments, brief sentences that felt like offerings. "Good bread," he said one morning, reaching for a second slice. Clara nearly dropped her cup. It was the first unsolicited compliment he'd ever given her. "Bessie taught me," she managed. "She's a good teacher." Caleb's eyes met hers briefly. "You're a quick learner." 2 compliments in one conversation. Bessie looked like she might fall off her chair. Samuel, oblivious to the significance of the moment, chose that instant to hurl his spoon across the table. It clattered against Caleb's plate, leaving a trail of mashed vegetables. Clara froze, mortified. "I'm so sorry." But Caleb was laughing. The sound was rusty like a door that hadn't been opened in years, but it was unmistakably laughter. He picked up the spoon and handed it back to Samuel, who immediately tried to grab his finger instead. "Strong grip," Caleb observed. "Kid's gonna be trouble when he grows up." "He already is." Clara couldn't stop smiling. "You should see what he did to Bessie's knitting yesterday." "Lord, don't remind me." Bessie shook her head. 3 hours of work unraveled in 30 seconds. Little demon. Samuel grinned, showing off his 2 new teeth, and everyone laughed again. Later, as Clara washed dishes while Bessie hung laundry, she watched through the window as Caleb worked with his horses. He moved among them with easy confidence, speaking softly, touching gently. One mare in particular seemed to follow him everywhere, nudging his shoulder, wickering for attention. "That's Rosie," Bessie said, appearing beside her. "Named her after his daughter." Clara's heart clenched. "He never told me that." "He don't talk about it, but I see him out there sometimes late at night just standing with that horse. Think it's the closest he can get to his little girl anymore." Clara thought about this as she watched Caleb scratch behind Rosie's ears, his scarred face soft with affection. So much pain hidden behind that stoic exterior. So much love with nowhere to go. Until now, maybe. She shook off the thought. Dangerous territory. She was a guest here, nothing more. A woman seeking temporary shelter from a storm. Whatever warmth was growing between them, she couldn't afford to read more into it than was there. But that night when Caleb brought her a cup of tea without being asked, "Bessie said you like it with honey," Clara felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with gratitude. January brought the coldest weather yet. The creek froze solid. Snow piled against the cabin walls in drifts taller than Clara. Even with the fire roaring constantly, frost formed on the inside of the windows. Samuel developed a cough. At first, Clara thought nothing of it. Babies got sick. It was normal. But by the second day, the cough had deepened, and by the third, her son was burning with fever. "Breathe, baby." Clara rocked him frantically, his tiny body limp against her chest. "Please just breathe. Let me see him." Caleb appeared at her side, his face taut with concern. "Clara, let me see him." She handed Samuel over with trembling hands, watching as Caleb laid the baby on the bed and began examining him with practiced efficiency. His hands moved with a confidence she hadn't expected, checking pulse points, listening to his chest, feeling his forehead. "You know what you're doing," she breathed. "My pa was a doctor, before he became a blacksmith." Caleb's expression was grim. "Taught me enough to help Emma when she got sick. Wasn't enough to save her, but..." He cut himself off. "This is pneumonia, or close to it." "Oh, God." Clara's legs gave out. Bessie caught her, easing her into a chair. "He needs to be kept warm. Steam will help open his chest." Caleb was already moving, gathering supplies. "Bessie, get water boiling. Clara, I need you to hold him upright. Keep him against your chest, your body heat will help." The night that followed was the longest of Clara's life. She held Samuel for hours, rocking him, singing to him, praying with every breath. Caleb stayed beside them, applying warm compresses, feeding Samuel tiny sips of herbal tea, monitoring his breathing with unwavering focus. "You've done this before," Clara whispered sometime after midnight. Caleb didn't look up from checking Samuel's pulse. "Rose got sick once. Winter fever. I sat up with her for 3 nights straight. She survived. That time." His jaw tightened. "Fire got her 8 months later." "Caleb, don't." His voice was harsh. "Don't ask me if I'm okay. Don't tell me this is different. Just let me focus on keeping your boy alive." Clara fell silent, but she reached out and covered his hand with hers. He didn't pull away. By dawn, Samuel's fever had broken. He was weak, still sick, but breathing easier. His eyes fluttered open, and found Clara's face, and he managed a small, exhausted smile. "There you are," Clara sobbed, pressing kisses to his forehead. "There's my brave boy." Caleb sat back, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. "He'll need rest. Plenty of fluids. Keep him warm. But I think he's gonna be okay." "You saved him." Clara looked at Caleb through tear-blurred eyes. "You saved my son." "Did what needed doing." "No." Clara shook her head fiercely. "You did what no one else could have done. You gave him back to me." She crossed the space between them and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. He went rigid with shock, but she didn't let go. "Thank you," she whispered against his shirt. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Slowly, hesitantly, his arms came up around her. He held her loosely at first, then tighter, his chin coming to rest on top of her head. "You're welcome," he said quietly. They stood like that for a long moment, two people clinging to each other in the aftermath of terror. When Clara finally pulled back, she saw something new in Caleb's gray eyes. Not just concern, not just duty, something warmer, something that made her heart skip. "Get some sleep," he said gruffly, stepping back. "Both of you, I'll keep watch." "Caleb?" "Sleep, Clara." She wanted to argue, wanted to name the thing growing between them, to drag it into the light where it couldn't hide. But exhaustion was pulling at her, and Samuel was already drifting off in her arms. "We'll talk later," she said. "Yeah." Caleb's voice was rough. "Later." But as Clara settled into bed with Samuel tucked safely against her, she knew that later was coming, whether they were ready for it or not. Something had shifted between them tonight. Something that couldn't be unshifted. And somewhere outside in the frozen darkness of the mountain wilderness, Marcus Ashford was still hunting. The storm inside the cabin had passed, but the one outside was just beginning. Samuel recovered slowly over the following days, his cough fading to occasional whimpers, his fever retreating until his cheeks bloomed pink again. Clara barely left his side, watching him sleep, counting his breaths, terrified that each improvement might be a false promise. Caleb checked on them every few hours, his examinations brief but thorough. He never stayed long, retreating to his chores or his horses as soon as he'd confirmed Samuel was improving. But Clara noticed things he probably didn't want her to notice. The dark circles under his eyes that proved he wasn't sleeping. The way his hands trembled slightly when he touched Samuel's forehead. The haunted look that crossed his face whenever the baby coughed. "He's reliving it," Bessie said quietly, one afternoon, finding Clara watching Caleb through the window. "Every time that child struggles to breathe, he's back in that cabin watching Rose slip away." "It wasn't the same illness. You said Rose died in the fire." "Don't matter." Bessie shook her head. "Grief don't follow logic. That man spent 8 years convincing himself he couldn't save anyone. Now he's fighting that belief with everything he's got." Clara thought about this as she watched Caleb split wood with fierce, almost violent strokes. Each swing of the axe seemed to carry more than physical effort. He was fighting something invisible, something that lived inside him. That evening, after Samuel had nursed and fallen into peaceful sleep, Clara found Caleb on the porch, despite the bitter cold. He stood with his back against the railing, staring out at the snow-covered mountains, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "You'll freeze out here," Clara said, pulling her shawl tighter as she joined him. "Been colder." "That's not a good reason to suffer." Caleb almost smiled. "Almost. You should be inside. Warm." "So should you." Clara moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body despite the cold. "Talk to me, Caleb. You've barely said 10 words since Samuel's fever broke." "Nothing to say." "That's not true, and we both know it." Clara turned to face him. "You saved my son's life. You sat up all night, fought for him when I was falling apart. And now you can't even look at me. Why? Caleb's jaw tightened. For a long moment, only the wind spoke, whistling around the corners of the cabin. Because I almost lost him. The words came out raw, torn from somewhere deep. You didn't lose him, Clara said gently. He's fine. He's healthy. Because of you. This time. Caleb finally met her eyes, and Clara saw the full weight of his fear. What about next time? What about the time after that? I couldn't save Rose. Couldn't save Emma. What makes you think I can protect anyone? You already have protected us. Every single day since you found us in that storm. That ain't enough. Caleb pushed off the railing, pacing like a caged animal. Men like Ashford don't give up. They got money power connections. Sooner or later they'll come back. And when they do, we'll face them together. Caleb stopped pacing. Together? Yes. Clara stepped closer, closing the distance between them. I'm not some helpless damsel waiting to be rescued, Caleb. I've been through too much for that. I ran from Marcus Ashford once, and I'll fight him if I have to. But I'd rather fight beside someone than alone. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Clara reached out and took his hand. His fingers were ice cold, but they curled around hers instinctively. You're not responsible for saving everyone. You're not responsible for things that happened years ago miles away when you weren't even there. All you're responsible for is the choices you make right now. And right now you're choosing to stand with us. Caleb stared at their joined hands. Clara, you don't have to carry everything alone anymore. Her voice softened. Neither do I. Maybe that's why God put us in each other's path, so we could stop being alone. The wind died down, leaving them in a pocket of stillness. Caleb raised his free hand and touched her cheek. His calloused fingers surprisingly gentle. I ain't good at this, he said quietly. Talking, feeling, being close to people. I noticed. That earned her an actual smile, small but real. Smart mouth. One of my many talents. Caleb's thumb traced her cheekbone, his gray eyes searching her face. I can't promise I won't fail you. Can't promise I'll always know the right thing to do or say. I'm not asking for promises. Clara covered his hand with hers. I'm just asking you to stay, to try, to let me in even when it's hard. That's asking a lot. I know. She held his gaze. But I think you're worth asking. Something broke open in Caleb's expression. The wall he'd built around himself brick by careful brick over 8 long years developed a crack. Small, but visible. Significant. He pulled her close and wrapped his arms around her, holding her against his chest, with a desperation that spoke louder than any words. Clara felt his heart pounding beneath her cheek, felt the slight tremor in his arms. I'm scared, he admitted into her hair. Ain't been scared of anything in years, but the thought of losing you and Samuel. You won't lose us. You can't know that. No, Clara agreed. But I can choose to believe it anyway. That's what hope is, Caleb. Choosing to believe in something good, even when you can't prove it. They stood holding each other as the stars emerged overhead, 2 broken souls learning to lean on each other. When they finally went inside, they didn't speak of what had passed between them. They didn't need to. Some things were too important for words. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Clara was feeding Samuel when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Her heart seized memories of Marcus Ashford flooding back. But Caleb's reaction was different. He set down his coffee and moved to the window, then relaxed visibly. Ezekiel Hawkins, he said. Old friend. Runs the mercantile in town. The man who entered was weathered and white-haired with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He carried a package under one arm and snow on his boots. Caleb. He nodded, greeting. Heard you had company. News travels fast. Small territory. Ezekiel's gaze found Clara and Samuel. "Ma'am, I'm Zeke. Known this stubborn mule since he was knee-high to a grasshopper." Clara Stone. She rose, balancing Samuel on her hip. "It's nice to meet you." "Likewise." Zeke set his package on the table. "Brought some supplies. Figured with the weather and the extra mouths you might be running low." "Didn't ask for charity," Caleb said, but there was no heat in it. "Ain't charity, it's neighborly." Zeke pulled out a chair and sat down without being invited. "Also brought news, the kind you need to hear." Clara felt Caleb tense beside her. "What kind of news?" "That Ashford fellow, the one who's been sniffing around asking about a woman and child." Zeke's expression darkened. "He's offering money now, $50 to anyone who can tell him where you're hiding." $50. More than most folks in Copper Springs made in months. "Anyone take him up on it?" Caleb asked. "Not yet. But that kind of money makes people talk." Zeke looked at Clara directly. "Ma'am, I don't know what your situation is and I ain't asking. But if that man means you harm, you should know he's not giving up." "He wants my son." Clara's voice was steady, despite the fear churning in her stomach. "He wants to take Samuel away from me." Zeke's eyebrows rose. "The baby why?" "Because Samuel's father was his brother, and their family doesn't want the scandal of an illegitimate child tarnishing their reputation." Clara lifted her chin. "So they'd rather steal him from his mother and pretend I never existed." The old man was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. Then he turned to Caleb. "You standing with her?" "Till my last breath." Zeke nodded slowly. "Then so am I. And there's others who feel the same. Martha Collins at the boarding house. Doc Peterson. The Reverend, believe it or not, after I explained the situation." "The church was locked when I needed help," Clara said bitterly. "No one answered my knocking." "Reverend wasn't there that night. His wife was dying. Passed 2 days later." Zeke's voice was gentle. "He feels terrible about it. Wants to make amends." Clara didn't know what to say. She'd assumed the worst about everyone in Copper Springs, and perhaps some of that was justified, but not all of it. "Why would any of them help me?" she asked finally. "They don't know me, and the station master made it clear what they think of women in my situation." "Station master's a fool." Zeke snorted. "Most folks in town know it. But you're right that opinions are mixed. Some people figure a woman who got herself in trouble deserves what she gets. Others remember that Jesus himself saved a woman from being stoned." He shrugged. "Point is, you got more friends than you think. If it comes to a fight, you won't be alone." After Zeke left, Clara sat at the table staring at the supplies he'd brought. Flour, sugar, salt, coffee. Small things that meant survival in winter. Small things that meant someone cared. "You're crying," Caleb observed. Clara touched her cheek, surprised to find it wet. "I didn't expect kindness. After everything that happened, I thought everyone in that town hated me." "Some do." Caleb sat across from her. "But not all. Zeke's been my friend for 20 years. Helped me through the worst of it after Emma and Rose. If he says people want to help, he means it. Why, though, they don't owe me anything." "Maybe that's the point." Caleb's hand covered hers on the table. "Maybe some people help because it's right, not because they owe. Maybe that's what makes them worth fighting for." Clara turned her hand over, interlacing her fingers with his. "Is that why you helped me, because it was right?" "That's why I stopped my horse." Caleb's thumb traced circles on her palm. "Why I'm still here. That's something else." "What is it?" He didn't answer with words. Instead, he raised her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss against her knuckles, his eyes never leaving hers. It was a gesture from another era, courtly and tender, completely at odds with his rough exterior. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. "Caleb." "I know." His voice was rough. "I know we got trouble coming. I know this ain't the time, but I need you to understand something before it all goes to hell." "What?" "You ain't just a woman I'm protecting. You ain't just a guest in my house." He took a breath. "You're the first person since Emma who made me want to wake up in the morning. The first one who made this cabin feel like something other than a tomb." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything." Caleb released her hand and stood. "Just know it. Whatever happens next, know that you matter. You and Samuel both." He walked out before she could respond, leaving Clara alone with his confession and a heart too full to contain. The following weeks passed in a strange mixture of tension and tenderness. Caleb remained vigilant, riding the property lines twice daily, checking for signs of intrusion. But within the cabin walls, something had shifted. He no longer retreated into silence after meals. He sat with Clara by the fire in the evenings, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing in comfortable quiet. Samuel, now 8 months old and fully recovered, had decided that Caleb was the most fascinating person in the world. He reached for him constantly, babbling happy nonsense whenever the tall man entered the room. "Pa," Samuel said clearly one morning, pointing at Caleb. The cabin went silent. Clara's heart stopped. She looked at Caleb, expecting him to retreat to rebuild the walls that had been slowly crumbling. Instead, he crossed to Samuel's high chair and picked him up, settling the baby against his chest with practiced ease. "That's right," he said quietly. "I'm right here." Clara covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. Bessie, watching from the doorway, smiled the first genuine smile Clara had seen from her in weeks. "About time," the old woman murmured. "About time." That night, after Samuel was asleep and Bessie had retired to her room, Clara found Caleb staring into the fire. "You could have corrected him," she said softly. "Told him you're not his father." "Could have." Caleb didn't look up. "Didn't want to." Clara knelt beside his chair. "What does that mean, for us?" "Means I'm done pretending I don't feel what I feel." Finally he met her eyes. "Means I want to be what that boy called me. What you both need, if you'll have me." "Caleb, you've never even kissed you." The corner of his mouth lifted. "Been thinking about remedying that." "Have you now?" "Every day for the past month." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Then what's stopping you?" "Wanted to do it right." Caleb rose from his chair and pulled her to her feet. "Wanted to make sure you understood what you'd be getting. A broken man with more ghosts than sense. A ranch in the middle of nowhere. A target on your back as long as Ashford keeps hunting. I understand." "And you still want this?" Clara reached up and cupped his scarred face in her hands. "I want you, Caleb Thornton. All of you. The broken parts and the whole parts. The ghosts and the silence and everything in between." He kissed her then finally, after weeks of almost touches and loaded glances. It was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was afraid she might break. But when Clara pressed closer, her fingers tangling in his hair, something broke loose in him. He kissed her like a man drowning, like she was air and salvation, and everything he'd been denied for 8 long years. His arms wrapped around her, lifting her slightly off the ground, holding her as if he would never let go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "What?" "Marry me." His hands framed her face. "I know it's fast. I know we got problems to solve first. But I need you to know I'm serious. I want you for my wife, Clara. Want Samuel for my son. Want to build something real with you." "Yes." The word came out before she could think. "Yes, Caleb. Yes." He kissed her again, softer this time, sealing the promise between them. Neither of them heard the rider approaching until it was too late. The door burst open. Marcus Ashford stood in the entrance, flanked by 2 men with guns drawn. His smile was cold and triumphant. "How touching," he said. "A family reunion. Unfortunately, I'm here to break it up." Caleb shoved Clara behind him, reaching for the rifle by the fireplace. But one of Marcus's men was faster, training his pistol directly at Caleb's chest. "Don't," Marcus warned. "I'd hate to make the lady a widow before she's even a wife." "How did you find us?" Clara demanded. $50 buys a lot of information." Marcus stepped inside, brushing snow from his expensive coat. "Turns out your friend Zeke talks in his sleep." His wife was more than happy to share what she'd overheard. Caleb's hands clenched into fists. "You're trespassing." "I have a warrant." Marcus pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "Signed by Judge Cornelius Pemberton himself, granting me legal custody of the child known as Samuel, illegitimate son of Thomas Ashford. That warrant's based on lies." "Prove it." Marcus's smile widened. "Oh wait, you can't. Because the only witness to my brother's promises is an unwed mother with no family, no standing, and no credibility, whereas I have lawyer's money and a judge in my pocket." Clara felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Everything she'd feared was coming true. Everything she'd run from had caught up. "You can't take him," she whispered. "Please, he's my son. He's all I have." "He's Ashford blood." Marcus's voice hardened. "And Ashfords take care of their own. You should be grateful we're willing to raise him at all, given the circumstances of his birth." "Grateful?" Clara's fear transformed into fury. "You want me to be grateful that you're stealing my child? I want you to be realistic." Marcus gestured to his men. "Get the baby." One of the men moved toward the bedroom where Samuel was sleeping. "No!" Clara lunged forward, but Marcus caught her arm, yanking her back. Caleb moved. It happened so fast Clara barely saw it. One moment, he was standing with his hands raised. The next, he'd knocked the pistol from the nearest man's grip and driven his fist into the man's face with a crack of breaking bone. The second man spun toward Caleb, but Caleb was already moving, grabbing the fallen pistol and bringing it up in one smooth motion. "Touch that baby," Caleb said calmly, "and I'll put a bullet in your skull." Everyone froze. Marcus still held Clara's arm, his grip painful. The man Caleb had hit lay groaning on the floor. The second man had his hand on his gun, but hadn't drawn. "Stalemate," Marcus observed. "How interesting." "Let her go." "Or what?" "You'll shoot me with witnesses. That's murder, Mr. Thornton. They'll hang you." "Maybe." Caleb's eyes were ice cold. "But you'll still be dead, and your daddy's Senate campaign will have a lot of explaining to do." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Marcus's face. "Here's what's going to happen," Caleb continued. "You're going to let Clara go. You're going to take your men and your fake warrant and get off my property, and you're going to leave this family alone. You can't stop me forever. Don't need to stop you forever. Just need to stop you today." Caleb's finger tightened on the trigger. "Tomorrow, I'll find a better lawyer than yours. Next week, I'll have witnesses who'll swear to your brother's promises. And next month, when your daddy's campaign falls apart because his son tried to kidnap a baby at gunpoint, you'll wish you'd never heard the name Clara Stone." Marcus's grip on Clara loosened slightly. "You're bluffing." "Try me." The standoff stretched for an eternity. Clara could hear her own heartbeat, could feel Marcus's indecision in the trembling of his hand. Finally, he released her arm. "This isn't over," he hissed. "It will be." Caleb didn't lower the gun. "Now get out of my house." Marcus gestured sharply to his men. They helped their injured companion to his feet and retreated to the door. At the threshold, Marcus turned back. "You've made a powerful enemy tonight, Mr. Thornton." "I've had worse." "We'll see about that." Then they were gone, swallowed by the night and the snow. Clara collapsed against Caleb, her entire body shaking. He held her with one arm, the pistol still raised toward the door, waiting until the sound of hoofbeats faded completely. "It's okay," he murmured into her hair. "They're gone. You're safe. He'll come back. I know. He'll never stop. I know that too. Caleb set down the gun and cupped her face in his hands. But we're not alone anymore. And we're not running. This is our home, Clara, our family. Nobody takes that from us. Not tonight. Not ever. Clara looked into his gray eyes and saw something she hadn't seen before. Not just determination, not just courage. Hope. Real, unbreakable hope. I love you, she said. The words came out raw and unplanned, but she didn't regret them. Not when Caleb's entire face transformed years of grief and isolation falling away like chains. I love you too. His voice cracked on the words. God help me, I love you too. He kissed her fierce and desperate, as if they'd almost lost each other. And maybe they had. Maybe they still could. But in that moment, with Marcus Ashford's threats still echoing in the cold air, Clara understood something fundamental. Some things were worth fighting for. Some people were worth dying for. And Caleb Thornton was both. The night after Marcus left, nobody slept. Caleb paced the cabin like a caged wolf, checking windows, reloading his rifle, planning defenses. Bessie brewed pot after pot of strong coffee, while Clara sat by Samuel's cradle watching her son sleep with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He'll come back with more men, Caleb said around midnight. Legal papers won't be enough for him now. Not after I humiliated him. What do we do? Clara asked. We get help. Real help. Caleb stopped pacing. Zeke said there were people in town willing to stand with us. Time to find out if he was right. You can't go to town. Marcus might have men watching the roads. Then I'll go cross-country. Know these mountains better than any city lawyer ever will. Caleb knelt beside her chair. I need you to stay here. Keep the doors locked. Don't open them for anyone except me or Bessie. Can you do that? Clara wanted to argue. Wanted to insist on going with him, on fighting beside him like she'd promised. But Samuel needed her here. If anything happened, she had to be with her son. Be careful, she whispered. Always am. Caleb kissed her forehead, then stood. I'll be back before noon. If I'm not, you will be. He held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded and slipped out into the darkness. Clara spent the night with Bessie by the fire, Samuel sleeping peacefully between them. They didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. The threat hanging over them was too large for words. Tell me about your daughter, Clara said, finally needing something to fill the silence. Sarah. Bessie's weathered face softened with old grief. She was beautiful. Had her daddy's eyes and my stubborn streak. Loved to sing. Used to make up songs about everything, the chickens, the weather, the bugs in the garden. How old was she when they took her? 6 years, 3 months, and 12 days. Bessie's voice didn't waver, but her hands tightened on her coffee cup. Sold her to a trader from Mississippi. Master said I was too attached, that it was making me difficult. Thought separating us would make me more obedient. Did it? Made me more determined to survive. Bessie's eyes met Clara's. That's what you gotta be now. Determined. Whatever comes through that door you fight. You survive. For that baby. I will. Promise me. Clara looked at Samuel, at his peaceful face, at the tiny fingers curled against his cheek. I promise. Dawn came, slowly, gray light creeping across the snow. Clara had just begun to worry when hoofbeats sounded in the distance, multiple horses moving fast. Bessie, she breathed. The old woman was already moving, grabbing the shotgun Caleb had left and positioning herself by the window. Get the baby. Get to the cellar. But what if it's Caleb? Then he'll find us when it's safe. Go. Clara scooped Samuel from his cradle and ran for the kitchen, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd just lifted the cellar door when she heard Bessie's voice, sharp with surprise. Lord have mercy! Clara froze. Bessie! You better come see this! Clutching Samuel. Clara crept back to the main room. Through the window, she could see a group of riders approaching, at least a dozen, maybe more. And at the front, unmistakable even at a distance, rode Caleb. He wasn't alone. Clara recognized Zeke Hawkins immediately. Behind him rode a man in a dark coat, who could only be the Reverend, a woman in practical traveling clothes, and a heavy-set man carrying a medical bag. The rest were townspeople armed with rifles and determination. "He did it," Clara whispered. "He actually did it." Caleb dismounted before the horse had fully stopped striding toward the cabin, with purpose in every step. Clara met him at the door, throwing herself into his arms. "You came back." "Told you I would." He held her tight, then pulled back. "We got work to do. Marcus is planning something. One of Zeke's contacts saw his men gathering supplies, rope, kerosene, extra ammunition. They're not coming for a negotiation." Clara's blood ran cold. "When?" "Tonight. Maybe tomorrow." Caleb looked over her shoulder at the people filing into his cabin. "But we're not going to be unprepared." The next few hours were a blur of activity. The Reverend, a kind-faced man named Matthew Cole, apologized profusely for the locked church door, explaining about his wife's death. The Dr. Peterson examined Samuel and declared him healthy, then began preparing medical supplies just in case. Martha Collins, the boarding house owner, who'd slammed her door in Clara's face, stood awkwardly in the corner until Clara approached her. "I'm sorry," Martha said before Clara could speak. "I was wrong. I judged you without knowing your story, and I'm ashamed." "Why are you here now?" Martha's chin lifted. "Because Zeke explained what that Ashford man wants to do. Steal a baby from its mother. I got 3 children of my own, Mrs. Stone. The thought of anyone trying to take them from me—" She shook her head. "There ain't no sin bad enough to justify that." Clara didn't know whether to feel grateful or bitter. These people had turned their backs when she needed them most. Now they wanted to help. Was that enough? She looked at Caleb, who was deep in conversation with Zeke and the Reverend planning their defense. At Bessie, who was organizing the women to prepare food and bandages. At Samuel, who was being gently bounced by Dr. Peterson while the man simultaneously checked his instruments. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about what people deserved. Maybe it was about what you needed to move forward. "Thank you," Clara told Martha, "for being here now." The older woman's eyes glistened. "I'll do whatever it takes to help. I swear it." Around noon, Caleb gathered everyone in the main room. "Marcus Ashford has money connections and men willing to do violence for pay," he said bluntly. "But we have something he doesn't. We have home, we have community, and we have the truth on our side." "What's the plan?" Zeke asked. "We hold this position. Make it clear that taking Samuel means going through all of us. Marcus is a coward at heart. He's been using lawyers and hired thugs because he doesn't want to get his own hands dirty. If we show him enough resistance, he'll back down." "And if he doesn't?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "Then we make him wish he had." The afternoon passed in tense preparation. Men took up positions around the property while women organized inside the cabin. Clara found herself loading ammunition beside Bessie, her hands steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "You ever shot a gun?" Bessie asked. "Never." "Then you probably shouldn't be loading bullets." Despite everything, Clara laughed. "Fair point." Bessie showed her how to do it properly, patient and methodical. The trick is staying calm. Fear makes your hands shake, and shaky hands make mistakes. You breathe deep focus on what's in front of you and let the rest take care of itself. Is that what you did during the war when everything was falling apart? That's what I did every day of my life till freedom came. Bessie met her eyes. And some days after. The world's always trying to take something from us, child. The trick is not letting it take your spirit, too. Clara thought about this as she watched the townspeople preparing to defend her family. These weren't soldiers or gunslingers. They were shopkeepers, farmers, ordinary people who'd decided that right mattered more than safety. "I don't deserve this," she said quietly. Bessie's hand closed over hers. Ain't about deserving. It's about belonging. You're one of us now, Clara. That means we fight for you. Same as you'd fight for us. The first shot came at dusk. Clara was helping Martha prepare dinner when the crack of gunfire split the air. She dropped the pot she was holding, her heart seizing with terror. "Everyone down!" Caleb's voice rang out. "They're here!" Clara grabbed Samuel from his cradle and ducked behind the heavy oak table. More shots followed, the sounds of bullets striking wood and shattering glass. Someone screamed outside, one of their defenders, or one of Marcus's men. She couldn't tell. "Stay here," Bessie ordered, checking the shotgun. "Don't move till I come back." "Bessie!" But the old woman was already gone, slipping out the back door with a determination that belied her age. Clara huddled with Samuel, her body curved protectively around him. The baby was crying now, frightened by the noise and the chaos. She pressed her lips to his forehead, murmuring nonsense words of comfort she didn't believe. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mama's here. Mama won't let anything happen to you." The gunfire intensified, then suddenly stopped. Silence. Clara held her breath, straining to hear anything. Voices, footsteps, some sign of what was happening. The quiet stretched on, broken only by Samuel's whimpers. The front door crashed open. Clara screamed. But it wasn't Marcus who stood in the entrance. It was Caleb, bleeding from a gash on his forehead, but very much alive. "Clara." He crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling her and Samuel into his arms. "Thank God. Are you hurt?" "No." "What happened? Is it over?" "Not yet." Caleb's face was grim. "Marcus has the cabin surrounded. His men set fire to the barn, the horses got out, but the building's gone. He's demanding we surrender you and Samuel, or he'll burn the whole place down." Clara's stomach dropped. "How many men does he have?" "At least 20. More than we expected." Caleb's hands gripped her shoulders. "But we're not giving up. You hear me? We're not surrendering. Caleb, if the cabin burns, then we'll rebuild it. But we're not letting that man take our son." "Our son." Even in the midst of terror, the words warmed Clara's heart. "What do we do?" "We negotiate. Buy time." Caleb's eyes were fierce. "Zeke sent a rider to Denver before the attack started. There's a federal marshal there who's been looking into Harrison Ashford's business dealings. If we can hold out long enough." Another shot cracked the air, followed by Marcus's voice amplified by the cold night air. "Thornton, I'm giving you 1 hour. Surrender the woman and child, or I'll burn every building on this property to the ground. And if that doesn't work, I'll start burning the people inside." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "He's bluffing," Caleb said, but his voice was uncertain. "Is he?" Clara thought of Marcus's cold eyes, his casual cruelty, the way he'd spoken about Samuel, as if the baby were property to be claimed. Would he really let witnesses go, people who could testify to what he's done? Caleb was silent. That was answer enough. "Let me go out there," Clara said suddenly. "What?" "Let me talk to him, face to face." Her voice steadied as the plan formed in her mind. He doesn't want a massacre. It would be too hard to cover up. What he wants is me and Samuel quiet and clean. If I can convince him there's another way, no. Caleb's face was stone. "Absolutely not." "Caleb." "I said no." He gripped her arms. "I'm not letting you walk out there to that monster. I'm not losing another person I love to circumstances I could have prevented. This isn't like before. I'm not helpless, and I'm not alone." Clara met his eyes. "But those people out there, Martha, Zeke, the Reverend, they came here because of us. If they die because I was too afraid to face Marcus myself, I'll never forgive myself. And neither will you." Caleb's jaw worked, fury and fear and love warring across his features. "I can't lose you," he said hoarsely. "You won't." Clara touched his scarred cheek. "I'm coming back. I promise." "How can you promise that?" Because I have something worth living for now, something I didn't have before. She looked at Samuel, then back at Caleb. I have you. Both of you. And that's worth fighting for. It's worth risking for. It's worth everything. Caleb was silent for a long, agonizing moment. Then he pulled her close and kissed her hard, desperate, full of everything he couldn't say. 10 minutes, he said when they broke apart. I'm giving you 10 minutes to talk. If anything goes wrong, I'm coming out there shooting. I don't care how many men he has. I understand. I love you. I know. Clara managed a small smile. I love you too. She handed Samuel to Bessie, who had returned from the back of the cabin with a grim expression and gunpowder stains on her dress. You watch him, Clara told the old woman. If anything happens to me, nothing's gonna happen to you. Bessie's voice was fierce. You're gonna walk out there, say whatever needs saying, and walk back. You understand? Yes, ma'am. Clara squared her shoulders and walked to the door. The cold hit her like a physical force as she stepped outside. The yard was illuminated by the dying flames of the barn, casting everything in flickering orange light. She could see Marcus standing in the middle of the clearing, surrounded by armed men, his expensive coat incongruous against the frontier backdrop. Miss Whitmore? He smiled as she approached, but his eyes were cold. How brave of you to join us. My name is Clara Stone. She stopped 10 feet from him, close enough to see his expression, far enough to run if needed. And I'm here to end this. Are you now planning to surrender? Planning to make you an offer? Marcus laughed, the sound harsh in the cold air. What could you possibly offer me? Information. Clara's voice didn't waver. About your brother Thomas. About where he really went when he abandoned me at that station. Marcus's smile faltered. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Because I received a letter last week from a woman in Denver named Sarah Whitley. Another woman Thomas deceived. Another woman carrying an Ashford child. Clara watched the color drain from Marcus's face. She's not the only one, is she? How many women has Thomas used and abandoned? How many illegitimate children are scattered across the territories? You're lying. Am I? Then why did your father really send you after me? It wasn't just about reputation, was it? It was about silencing potential witnesses before someone important started asking questions. Marcus's composure cracked. You don't know anything. I know that Harrison Ashford is running for Senate on a family values platform. I know that Thomas has been using your family's money to finance his travels and his courtships. I know that if even half of this comes out, your father's political career is finished. Clara stepped closer. And I know that a federal marshal is on his way from Denver right now with questions about your family's financial dealings. You're bluffing. Try me. The standoff stretched between them, electric with tension. Around them, Marcus's men shifted uneasily, sensing that something had changed. What do you want? Marcus finally asked. I want you to leave. Go back to Philadelphia and tell your father that this particular scandal is better left buried. I'll keep my silence about Thomas, about the other women, about everything if you leave my family alone. And if I don't, then I start talking. To the marshal, to the newspapers, to anyone who'll listen. Clara's voice hardened. I have nothing left to lose, Marcus. You already took everything from me, my name, my family, my reputation. But I have a new name now, a new family, a new life, and I will burn yours to the ground before I let you touch my son. Silence. Marcus stared at her, rage and calculation warring in his eyes. Behind him, his men waited for orders. You think you've won, he said quietly. You think this is over. I think it can be, if you're smart enough to walk away. And if I'm not. A rifle cocked somewhere in the darkness. Then another, and another. All around the clearing, the townspeople of Copper Springs emerged from their hiding places, weapons trained on Marcus's men. Then you'll find out just how far these people will go to protect one of their own, Clara said. Marcus looked around at the armed citizens surrounding him, at the burning barn, at the woman standing before him with fire in her eyes and steel in her spine. For a long moment nobody moved. Then Marcus gestured sharply to his men. "Stand down." "Sir." One of his men stepped forward. "We can still—" "I said stand down." Marcus's voice was ice. "We're leaving." He turned back to Clara, and the hatred in his eyes made her flinch despite her victory. "This isn't over," he said softly for her ears alone. "My family doesn't forget, doesn't forgive. Someday, somewhere, you'll let your guard down. And when you do, then I'll be ready." Clara lifted her chin. "I've been fighting for survival my whole life, Marcus. First against a father who threw me out, then against a man who abandoned me, now against you. I'm not afraid anymore, and I never will be again." She turned her back on him, a deliberate insult, and walked back toward the cabin. Behind her, she heard horses mounting wheels, turning men retreating into the night. She didn't look back. Not once. Caleb met her at the door, sweeping her into his arms before she'd even crossed the threshold. "You did it," he breathed into her hair. "You actually did it." "We did it." Clara pulled back to look at him. "All of us." Around them, the defenders of the Thornton Ranch were emerging from their positions, exhaustion and relief written across their faces. Zeke was shaking hands with the Reverend. Martha was crying into Dr. Peterson's handkerchief. Bessie stood in the doorway, Samuel in her arms, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Is it really over?" Clara asked. "It's really over." Caleb cupped her face in his hands. "You're safe. Samuel's safe. We're all safe." Clara looked at the people around her, strangers who had become friends, enemies who had become allies, a community that had chosen to fight for a woman they'd once condemned. "How can I ever thank them?" "By staying." Caleb smiled, the expression transforming his scarred face. "By being part of this community. By letting them see that their faith in you was justified." "You mean by being your wife?" "That too." He kissed her forehead. "If you'll still have me." Clara laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her, from the place where hope had taken root and refused to die. "Yes," she said. 1,000 times yes. The celebration that followed was quiet, but genuine. Coffee and bread shared around a crowded table, stories exchanged, wounds tended, gratitude expressed in the simple act of sitting together safe and whole. Sometime after midnight, Clara found herself alone on the porch, watching the first light of dawn creep over the mountains. The air smelled of smoke from the ruined barn, but also of snow and pine and possibility. Arms wrapped around her from behind. "Can't sleep?" Caleb asked. "Don't want to." Clara leaned back against his chest. "I'm afraid if I close my eyes, I'll wake up and find out this was all a dream." "It's not a dream." His arms tightened. "It's real. We're real." "I know." Clara turned in his embrace, looking up at the man who had saved her, who had fought for her, who had given her something she'd never thought she'd have again. "Home." "I know," she said again, and kissed him as the sun rose over the mountains, painting the snow in shades of gold, and rose promising a new day, a new beginning, a future worth fighting for. Spring came to Copper Springs, like a whispered promise finally kept. The snow retreated from the mountains, revealing wildflowers beneath. The creek behind Caleb's ranch swelled with snowmelt, its music filling the air day and night. And in the small cabin that had become her sanctuary, Clara Thornton, no longer Stone, no longer Whitmore, watched her son take his first steps. "Caleb!" she called, her voice cracking with joy. "Come quick!" He appeared in the doorway instantly, rifle in hand, old habits dying hard. But when he saw what had stopped her breath, the weapon clattered forgotten to the floor. Samuel stood in the middle of the room, wobbling on chubby legs, arms outstretched for balance. His face was scrunched with concentration, tongue poking out between his lips. "Come on, son." Caleb dropped to his knees, opening his arms. "Come to Pa." 1 step, 2, 3. Samuel crashed into Caleb's chest with a triumphant shriek, and Caleb caught him, lifting him high, laughing with a joy Clara had never heard from him before. "You did it!" Caleb spun Samuel around, drawing peals of delighted laughter. "That's my boy. That's my strong, brave boy." Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. 3 months ago she'd been running for her life through a blizzard. Now she was watching her son walk into the arms of a father who loved him as fiercely as any blood relation could. Bessie appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. When she saw what was happening, her weathered face split into the widest smile Clara had ever seen. "Well, would you look at that?" She crossed to Clara's side. "That boy's going to be running before we know it." "Heaven help us all," Clara laughed. Caleb set Samuel down, keeping hold of his hands as the baby practiced his new skill. His gray eyes found Clara's across the room, full of emotion he still struggled to voice. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me this." He looked down at Samuel, then back at her. "For giving me a family again." Clara crossed to him and wrapped her arms around both her men. "You gave me the same thing. We saved each other." They stood together in the morning light, a family forged not by blood, but by choice, by struggle, by love that had grown in the most unlikely soil. The wedding had been simple. Reverend Cole performed the ceremony in the same church that had once locked its doors against Clara. The irony wasn't lost on her, but forgiveness had become easier with practice. The Reverend had wept as he apologized, explaining about his wife's final hours, and Clara had found herself offering comfort instead of condemnation. People could change. She was living proof. The whole town had turned out for the celebration. Martha Collins baked a 3-tier cake. Zeke provided enough food to feed an army. Dr. Peterson gave them a medical kit as a wedding present, practical and precious in equal measure. Clara had worn a simple blue dress she'd never felt comfortable in, white, with wildflowers woven through her hair. Caleb had cleaned up better than she'd imagined possible. His beard trimmed his best shirt, pressed his gray eyes soft with wonder as she walked toward him. "You sure about this?" he'd asked as she reached the altar. "Last chance to run." "I'm done running." Clara had taken his hands. "I'm exactly where I want to be." The kiss that sealed their vows had drawn cheers from the assembled crowd, and actual tears from Bessie, who'd sworn up and down she wasn't crying, just had something in her eye. That night, alone in the cabin that was now truly theirs, Caleb had held Clara close and spoken words she'd never expected to hear. "I thought my life ended with Emma and Rose. Thought I was just marking time till I could join them." His voice was rough with emotion. "You showed me I was wrong. You and Samuel. You showed me that loving again wasn't a betrayal. It was a gift." "They'd want you to be happy," Clara had whispered. "I know that now." He'd kissed her forehead. "Took a stubborn woman and a determined baby to make me see it. We Thorntons are persistent that way." He'd laughed at that. Really laughed, and the sound had filled Clara's heart to overflowing. Now, 3 months into their marriage, life had settled into rhythms Clara once thought impossible. She helped Caleb with the horses, discovering an aptitude for the work that surprised them both. She learned to ride properly, no longer the terrified passenger, but a confident horsewoman who could race Caleb across the meadow and occasionally win. She helped Bessie with the house, mastering the domestic arts that had seemed so pointless in her Philadelphia finishing school. Bread rose beneath her hands now. Clothes emerged clean and whole from the wash. The garden she'd planted was beginning to show green shoots, promising vegetables for the summer table. And she helped the community, visiting sick neighbors, with Dr. Peterson teaching reading to children whose parents had never learned, organizing supplies for families struggling through hard times. "You've become quite the pillar of society," Zeke observed one afternoon as Clara finished sorting donations at the mercantile. Hard to believe you're the same woman who stumbled off that train platform a year ago. I'm not the same woman. Clara tied off a bundle of clothing. That woman was broken, terrified, alone. And now? Clara thought about the question seriously. Now I'm whole. Or as whole as anyone gets, I suppose. I have a husband who loves me, a son who needs me, friends who stand by me. She smiled. Turns out that's all anyone really needs. What about your family back east, your father? The question still carried weight even after all this time. Clara had written to her mother once, shortly after the wedding, a brief letter explaining where she was and that she was safe. She hadn't expected a response. She'd received one anyway. My mother wrote back. Clara reached into her pocket and withdrew a worn envelope. She's left my father. Moved in with her sister in Boston. Says she's been praying for me every day since I left. That's wonderful. She wants to visit. Meet Samuel. Meet Caleb. Clara's voice wavered. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Zeke's hand covered hers on the counter. Family's complicated. Always has been. But sometimes the people who hurt us most are also the ones who need our forgiveness most. My father doesn't want forgiveness. He thinks he was right. I wasn't talking about your father. Zeke's eyes were kind. I was talking about your mother. She chose her husband over her daughter, and she's been living with that guilt ever since. Maybe seeing you happy, seeing that you survived and thrived despite everything, maybe that's the closure she needs. Clara considered this as she walked home, the late spring sun warm on her face. Forgiveness had become easier with practice, but some wounds ran deeper than others. Her father's rejection still ached when she let herself think about it. But her mother had slipped that Bible page into her hand, had whispered, I love you, as Clara walked out the door, had never stopped praying even when prayer seemed pointless. Maybe Zeke was right. Maybe it was time. That evening, after Samuel was asleep and Bessie had retired to her room, Clara told Caleb about her mother's letter. What do you want to do? He asked. I want to invite her here. Let her meet you and Samuel. Show her that I'm okay. Clara hesitated. But I'm scared. Of what? Of being disappointed again. Of opening myself up and getting hurt. She leaned against his shoulder. I know it's silly. It's not silly. Caleb pulled her closer. It's honest. And whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you want her to come, she's welcome. If you want to wait, we wait. If you never want to see her again, that's your choice too. What would you do? Caleb was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. After Emma and Rose died, I cut everyone off. Friends, family, anyone who tried to reach me. Told myself I was protecting myself from more pain. He shook his head. Took me 8 years to realize I was just protecting myself from more life. And life includes pain. You can't have one without the other. So you think I should let her come? I think you should do whatever feels right in your heart. He kissed her temple. But I also think the Clara I know isn't the kind of woman who lets fear make her decisions. Not anymore. Clara wrote back to her mother the next day. The letter that went east on the weekly mail coach was brief but warm, inviting Margaret Whitmore to visit whenever she felt ready. The response came 3 weeks later, a tearful acceptance, and a promise to arrive before summer's end. Nervous? Bessie asked, as Clara cleaned the cabin for the 3rd time that morning. Terrified. Good. The old woman smiled. Means you care. Wouldn't be worth doing if you didn't care. When the stagecoach finally arrived in Copper Springs, Clara was waiting on the platform where her nightmare had begun a year before. The irony wasn't lost on her, standing in the same spot where Thomas had abandoned her, preparing to embrace the mother who'd let her go. Margaret Whitmore had aged in the year since they'd parted. Her hair was grayer, her face more lined. Her shoulders bowed with a weight that had nothing to do with the traveling cases she carried. But her eyes were exactly as Clara remembered, kind, sorrowful, full of love that had never quite found the courage to speak. Clara. Her mother's voice cracked. My beautiful girl. Mother. They stood facing each other, neither quite sure how to bridge the gap. Then Margaret dropped her cases and opened her arms, and Clara fell into them with a sob she'd been holding back for more than a year. I'm sorry. Margaret wept into Clara's hair. I'm so sorry. I should have fought for you. Should have stood up to your father. Should have... It's okay. Clara pulled back, wiping her eyes. It's okay, Mother. I survived. I'm happy. That's what matters now. But the things he said to you, the way he threw you out, made me stronger. Clara took her mother's hands. Made me find my own path. Made me meet Caleb and build a life I never would have had in Philadelphia. She smiled through her tears. Maybe everything that happened was supposed to happen. Maybe this was always where I was meant to be. Margaret stared at her daughter as if seeing her for the first time. You've changed. I've grown. Clara picked up one of the cases. Come on, there's someone I want you to meet. The walk to the ranch took almost an hour, but Clara didn't mind. She pointed out landmarks along the way, the spot where Caleb had found her in the blizzard, the creek where she'd learned to fish, the meadow where she rode every morning. Her mother listened with wonder in her eyes, gradually understanding that this wild, beautiful land had become her daughter's home. Caleb was waiting on the porch when they arrived, Samuel balanced on his hip. He'd dressed in clean clothes and combed his hair, but nothing could soften his weathered face or hide the scar that curved down his cheek. Margaret stopped short at the sight of him. Mother, this is Caleb Thornton, my husband. Clara climbed the porch steps and took Samuel from Caleb's arms. And this is your grandson, Samuel. Silence. Margaret looked from Caleb's scarred face to Samuel's bright eyes, to Clara's obvious happiness. Whatever she'd expected to find in the wilds of Colorado, this clearly wasn't it. He's beautiful, she whispered, finally reaching toward Samuel with trembling hands. May I? Clara transferred the baby to her mother's arms. Samuel studied the stranger's face with serious eyes, then broke into his widest smile and grabbed her nose. Well, Margaret laughed, tears streaming down her cheeks. I suppose that's a proper greeting. He likes you. Clara glanced at Caleb, who was watching the scene with guarded hope. Samuel's an excellent judge of character. Takes after his mother, Caleb said quietly. Margaret looked up at him, really looked, seeing past the scars to the man beneath. You saved my daughter. She saved herself. I just gave her a place to land. You gave her more than that. Margaret's voice was fierce. You gave her love, a home, a family, things her own father refused to provide. Ma'am, don't ma'am me. She stepped closer, Samuel still in her arms. I spent a year thinking my daughter was lost forever, dead maybe, alone and suffering certainly. Instead, I find her thriving, happy, loved. Her chin trembled. You did that, Mr. Thornton, you and this community, and I will spend the rest of my life grateful. Caleb looked uncomfortable with the praise, but he nodded acknowledgement. You're welcome to stay as long as you like, Mrs. Whitmore. Any family of Clara's is family of mine. Thank you. Margaret turned back to Clara. He's a good man. I know. Better than I deserve as a son-in-law, considering everything. Mother. Clara touched her arm. Let's not talk about deserving anymore. Let's just talk about what is, what we can build going forward. Margaret nodded slowly. Forward. Yes, I think I'd like that. The days that followed were a revelation. Clara watched her mother transform from a broken woman carrying years of guilt into something approaching peace. Margaret helped Bessie in the kitchen, learning frontier cooking with the same determination Clara had shown. She played with Samuel for hours, making up for lost time with a grandmother's devoted attention. She even accompanied Clara on her visits to sick neighbors, putting her Philadelphia education to use in ways her society upbringing never would have allowed. She's different than I expected, Caleb admitted one night, lying beside Clara in the darkness. How so? stronger, more adaptable. He was quiet for a moment. I think I understand now why you forgave her. She's not a bad person. Just a scared one who made scared choices. That's exactly what she was. Clara curled against his side. What we all are, really. Scared people doing our best. Some people's best is better than others. True. She kissed his shoulder. But we can't control what others do. Only how we respond. And I'd rather respond with grace than bitterness. When did you get so wise? Must have rubbed off from someone. She smiled in the darkness. Some grumpy rancher who taught me about second chances. Caleb laughed softly and pulled her closer. Go to sleep, wise woman. Yes, dear. Summer bloomed full and warm around the ranch. Clara's garden flourished, producing vegetables that Bessie transformed into feasts. The horses Caleb trained were sold to buyers from across the territory, building a reputation that brought more business than he could handle alone. He hired 2 hands to help young men from town who needed work and respected the quiet rancher who'd stood against impossible odds for love. Margaret stayed through June, then July, then admitted she wasn't sure she wanted to leave at all. Boston is cold, she told Clara one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. In more ways than one. My sister means well, but she's never understood me. Not like here. Margaret nodded. Here people see me for who I am now, not who I was or whose wife I was. Just Margaret. Just your mother. She wiped her eyes. I haven't felt this free in 40 years. Then stay. I couldn't impose. It's not imposing. Clara took her mother's hand. Family helps family. That's what I've learned since coming here. The people who love you want to support you. Letting them isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Where did my timid daughter go? Margaret asked wonderingly. The girl who couldn't speak up at dinner parties, who flinched at her father's displeasure. She grew up. Clara smiled. She had to. Margaret moved into the guest room that Caleb had built as an addition to the cabin officially for visitors, but everyone knew who it was really for. She became part of the household, as naturally as if she'd always been there, her presence filling a gap Clara hadn't known existed. 3 generations under one roof, Bessie observed one morning. 4, if you count me. We always count you. Clara hugged the old woman. You're as much family as anyone. Speaking of family, Bessie's eyes twinkled. When you gonna tell him? Clara's hand flew to her stomach. How did you know? Child, I've delivered more babies than I can count. I know the signs. Bessie's smile widened. How far along? 2 months, maybe 3. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. I was going to tell Caleb tonight. Then you best get to it. That man's gonna burst with happiness. She told him that evening after Samuel was asleep and Margaret had retired with a book. They sat on the porch swing Caleb had built watching fireflies dance across the meadow. I have something to tell you. Caleb turned toward her, his expression immediately concerned. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Clara took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Everything's exactly right. She watched comprehension dawn across his scarred face, watched his gray eyes widen, watched his mouth open and close without sound. You mean, yes. We're going to have yes. Clara. Her name came out as a prayer. He gathered her into his arms, holding her with trembling gentleness. Clara. Are you happy? Happy? He pulled back to look at her, and she saw tears on his weathered cheeks, the first she'd ever seen from him. I thought my life was over. Thought I'd never know joy again. And now? Now I have more than I ever dreamed possible. He pressed his forehead to hers. A wife I love. A son who calls me Pa. A baby on the way. A home filled with family and laughter. His voice cracked. How did I get so lucky? We found each other. Clara cupped his face in her hands. In the middle of a blizzard at the lowest point of both our lives, we found each other. That's not luck, Caleb. That's grace. Grace. He tested the word. I like that. So do I. She kissed him softly. Grace is what brought us together, and grace is what we'll pass on to our children. The knowledge that no matter how dark things get, love finds a way. Family finds a way. Hope finds a way. The baby arrived in early spring just as the snow was beginning to melt. A girl with her father's gray eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. Rose. Clara placed the infant in Caleb's arms. We'll call her Rose. Caleb stared down at his daughter with an expression of wonder that made Clara's heart overflow. After the first Rose, the one who taught you how to love. Clara touched his arm. And the second Rose, the one who'll teach you all over again. It's perfect. His voice was thick with tears he didn't try to hide. She's perfect. Samuel, now a sturdy toddler of 18 months, peered at his baby sister with suspicious curiosity. Baby, your sister. Clara lifted him so he could see better. Rose. Woes. Samuel reached out and patted the baby's head with uncertain gentleness. My woes. That's right. Caleb's free arm gathered his son close. Your Rose. Your family. Margaret and Bessie appeared in the doorway, both wiping their eyes. Well, would you look at that? Bessie shook her head. 3 generations of Thorntons all in one room. 4, Margaret corrected softly. If you count me. We always count you, Clara said, echoing her earlier words. Both of you, your family, now and always. Later, after the baby had been fed, and Samuel put to bed after Margaret and Bessie had retired, and the cabin had grown quiet, Clara and Caleb sat together by the fire with Rose sleeping peacefully between them. What are you thinking? Clara asked. Caleb was quiet for a moment, staring into the flames. I'm thinking about the night we met, how close I came to riding past, how different everything would be if I had. But you didn't. No. He looked at her, his scarred face soft in the firelight. Something made me stop, made me turn my horse toward a stranger in trouble instead of away. He shook his head. For a long time I thought I was saving you. Now I know the truth. What's that? You saved me. His hand found hers. You and Samuel. You gave me a reason to live again, to hope again, to love again. He lifted her fingers to his lips. I owe you everything, Clara Thornton. You don't owe me anything. Clara shifted closer, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby. We owe each other. That's what marriage is, what family is. We carry each other through the hard times and celebrate together through the good ones. And this, Caleb gestured around them at the sleeping baby, at the solid walls, at the life they'd built together. What do you call this? Clara looked at her husband, at the man who had been her salvation and become her home. She thought about everything they'd survived, blizzards and illness enemies, and fear, rejection, and loss. She thought about everything they'd gained, love and family, community and purpose, hope and healing. This. She smiled, peace settling over her like a warm blanket. This is exactly where we're supposed to be. Outside, spring continued its patient work, coaxing life from frozen ground. The mountains stood sentinel over the valley, eternal and unchanging. The creek sang its endless song. And in a cabin that had once been a tomb for a broken man's grief, a family slept safe and whole, and together. Not because the world had been kind to them, not because they had earned their happiness, but because they had found each other in the darkness and refused to let go. Some people called it luck, others called it fate. Clara and Caleb called it something simpler. They called it love. And in the end, that was all any of them had ever needed.